My grandfather Turner was a big influence on me because he had been living on the river all his life, living at Rock Street as a kid and paddling up the river, and they made their own, he called them canoes, but they were more like kayaks, you know what I mean?
I don't know anybody who's involved in the environment or on a conservation commission or who loves the towns of Middleborough and Lakeville that didn't know Dick Turner. He was a man who understood the land and the people, and he worked to preserve the good things that he saw in this area.
I grew up in Lakeville while it was actually a farming area. There was everything. There were so many poultry farms you would not believe it, all over southeastern Massachusetts. Some of my first jobs were doing chores on farms. I used to walk up to Mrs. Alden's house for a bottle of milk every day, and so she said, "Dick, I'd like to hire you to do some work for me. Would you be interested?" So she never mentioned anything about pay or anything, but I said yes. So I was pumping water with a pitcher pump, a great big long handle thing, at any rate, and I couldn't fill a bucket up because I couldn't walk with, you know, a 12-quart pail full of water. But at any rate, I would fill up a trough and then hook a cow and bring it over and let it drink its fill. And then I'd have to go back and pump more water for the second cow, and then for the horse. At any rate, of course, when they were out in the pasture, I didn't have to do that chore, you know. Yeah. But then I had to do it for the chicken pen and the duck pen. And so at any rate, after a while, she paid me 25 cents a week. My next job was working on a poultry farm, and that was better pay. I think I got 25 cents an hour then, you know, and the fun part of it was driving Model A Fords around, bringing Holland grain and water and so forth out to the chickens on the range, you know. Oh, wow. At any rate, so anyway, that was a good job. I got to tell you that I've seen eagles all my life, though, from the time I was a small kid. I had a pet great horned owl for some time, and that owl thought I was its daddy or mama, you know what I mean, and would come and land on my shoulder with those things, never scratched me at all. And sometimes it would even, when it was little, it would even try to step on top of my head. I discouraged that pretty quickly, at any rate. But just with being in the yard, you see that thing, look, and you'd look up there. There's an eagle up there, but it's so high up, you'd never ever focus on it if that bird hadn't done it, pointed in that direction, you know. And some of my earliest memories of the Nemasket River were were fishing, and we fished off the Vaughan Street Bridge, and quite regularly. And my father built a nice little boat, and the Freitas family allowed us to keep it in a little pool that they had there. And I would go up there with friends and paddle upstream, and had some good fishing times. And also we would go swimming, you know what I mean? Where the weather was a sandy bottom, we would commonly go swimming. Even sometimes going up a little further and camping overnight, and had some grand experiences doing that. My grandfather was a big influence. My grandfather Turner was a big influence on me, because he had been living on the river all his life, living at Rock Street as a kid, and paddling up the river. And they made their own, he called them canoes, but they were more like kayaks, you know what I mean? So he was a big influence on everything that doing with hunting, fishing, trapping, and the river, you know. Most of my experiences with heron would be at Oliver Mill Park, because and also Wareham Street, because when it was legal to take them, we would go there and dip them up with a net, and my son would strip them, milk them, so to speak, to find out whether it was a male or a female. The males went right back in the water, and we kept the females to cut the roe out of them. And when we had our fill of that, you know what I mean, we were on our way, and then use those carcasses, as the Indians had taught the people, to put under crops in your garden, family garden, to use as fertilizer. So.
Dick Turner, I mean, what can you say? He was an icon. I had the pleasure to know him for over 30 years. He was a neighbor of my mother-in-law's down at Staple Shore Road. He had a cottage on the pond. I used to talk to him all the time about fishing, about the eagles, about the wood ducks. If anyone in this area goes around any swampland in the area and they see a wood duck, chances are it was put up by Dick Turner. Just picture a gentleman standing on a small canoe putting a wood duck up in a swamp. They're everywhere. You can see them everywhere in this area. I think his three loves, as far as I was concerned, were the eagles, the bald eagles, the wood ducks, and of course the herring. And recently, we've reconnected. He was very interested in them this year. I brought him to a few meetings. He would come down the herring run early on before he got sick. I would talk to him every other night or so. If I missed the night calling him, he'd call me up. Hi Tom, this Dick, just checking in, see how the herring are running. I'd give him an update on the counts, whatever, and because later on he wasn't getting out of his apartment. But just a fantastic gentleman, a wealth of knowledge, better than any encyclopedia you could imagine, and just a really great guy.
I started working for the Division of Fish and Wildlife quite accidentally, really. They were looking for someone with a general knowledge of everything to do with wildlife, and so I was interviewed. And when I went up there, they said, "Well, you haven't even asked what the pay would be, but we're going to tell you. It would be about $1 an hour." I said, "That's fine with me. That's fine with me." That would be 12 months of the year, whereas what I've been doing for $1 an hour were seasonal jobs mostly, you know. And so that's what got me started in 1949, and I was right at it until 1984.
Wow.
I had a 2-year vacation during the Korean War. It was a great experience, however. I didn't get to Korea, but I spent a full year in Japan. Well, one of the big jobs that I had that first year was trapping nuisance beaver out on the western part of the state. So I was stationed out there in East Lee, near Pittsfield, and answering complaints and going up and live trapping beaver, and then moving them to places where the state forest people thought they needed them. But most of them rued the day afterwards because they multiplied too fast and created problems with water supplies and you name it. We used to do a lot of planting of trees and shrubs, and much of this was done on farms that the Soil Conservation Service, U.S. Department of Agriculture, had arranged. And so they provided the shrubs, we provided the labor. And we covered, oh goodness, we were everywhere. We were on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, as well as going up on the North Shore even to some extent, you know what I mean? But we went right out to the Connecticut River Valley and working on farms there, so one job that I was at out in Berkshire County, it was just such a stony mess, and they had guys come in with bulldozers and so forth, and cleared it, and you just wouldn't believe what marvelous land it was after that. But no one could have afforded to do it themselves, you know what I mean? But this was put on as a demonstration, and boy, that turned a lot of heads, I'll tell you that. That was great.
Dick Turner was everybody's friend. Everybody seemed to know him. Certainly if you were in town for any length of time, growing up, he's related to half of the people in the area, I think. And I had come back as an adult. I had left Lakeville for a while, came back as an adult with young kids. And one of the things Dick always did was recycle bicycles that he found at the town dump. So he rode bicycles of all sorts all over town, and he would find kids that he could place one of those bicycles with. So when I had young children, he would drop by, I'd be working in the garden, I'd turn around and Dick's there to say hello. And gee, I was thinking of your kids, I just found this bike, if you want to come by and get it. Or even when I was building my house, he would come by, make comments on how the progress was going. As a teenager, I worked with one of his nephews building his house in Lakeville. And I don't know how old Dick was at the time, but shoulder to shoulder, we put on roofing shingles ourselves. And like I say, he would give people calls. And even I understand up until the end, he was calling different people that he was thinking of just to tell them, hey, you've been a great friend, enjoyed knowing you, maybe share a story. And he, of course, had been, I believe, in World War II in the Pacific Theater, and my wife has Japanese heritage, and her uncles had served in World War II in Europe as an all-Japanese outfit, and that also seemed to tie to him. But one of the best things I think he did for my kids, and I know he did it for lots of people's kids, was he gave us a call on one winter day, and he had a place on Assawamsett, and it was a strange, cold year with no snow, and Assawamsett was fully frozen over, and the ice was like glass. And he called and said, get the kids over here. I've never seen it this good. They need to enjoy skating on Assawamsett. So I can only imagine the number of lives he touched in that sort of way, where he was thinking of others, thinking of how others might enjoy the outdoors in all aspects, all times a year.
My grandfather was born in 1875, and he grew right up on Rock Street in Middleborough, and Francis Lincoln Turner, and he was a friend with the man who built the steam engines and steam boats, and Peter LeBaron was his name, and they were the best of buddies, and they his stories about their activities, really always amazed me. And I think most people have little idea as to how level this river is. and how it flows all the way down to Route 28 in Middleborough before it accelerates. So when the steamboats were on the river and the people that were being poled around on the river to just sightseeing, when that occurred, it all had to be occurring above Route 28, which is now called East Grove Street. It had to be there. And I'm sure that there's a picture someplace or other of a bunch of boathouses in that general area too. I think most people are unaware of that. But all you got to do is paddle a canoe down there, and all of a sudden, zoom, you're going along at a heck of a good rate of speed. And you know right well that nobody was going to pole the boat up there through that, and the steamboat certainly couldn't negotiate that. There was lots and lots of trapping on the river when I was young, and I joined right in with it, you know, and as soon as I could get a trapping license, and there was pretty good connections between the various trappers, and so they would have, one guy would have a particular stretch of the river to himself, and then the other guy would have another stretch, maybe even the other side of the river, or, you know, and muskrat was their primary goal. And, you know, we used to get reasonably good money for them for quite a long period of time. And so Arnold Thomas in Middleborough was a fur buyer, and he was very, very wonderful man. And he was especially good to young kids because he was trying to encourage them to stay at it, you know what I mean? So he would probably pay us a little bit better than he would other people. When you actually had a mink, or I never had an otter, but a mink every once in a while would end up in the muskrat trap, and he would praise you so much. Wow, and you did a great job of skinning that and all that stuff, you know. So later on, when I was teaching other kids in the neighborhood, I would talk them through it, you know what I mean? And he'd say, "Did you do this yourself?" "Yeah, Dick Turner was showing me how." I don't know.
Dick Turner, yes. I don't know anybody who's involved in the environment or on a conservation commission or who loves the towns of Middleborough and Lakeville that didn't know Dick Turner. Awesome individual. He probably single-handedly found the information and created an atmosphere where an awful lot of your state lands that you see around here were through the efforts of Dick Turner. He talked to landowners, he went through and checked deeds, he did everything he could to preserve those good places that we have in this town. Hunters and fishermen owe him a great deal of credit in the Plymouth County area.
I kind of convinced the Lakeville Conservation Commission that we should spend the $4,000 that we had in a land account to buy 27 acres of land on Staple Shore Road that runs out, practically speaking, to the Nemasket River. And there was one fellow on the committee that was against it, but luckily the others agreed with me. So that was kind of like a goodbye, I would think. and it's probably got, I don't know, a quarter of a mile at least of road frontage on the street. And you know, so we bought that very, very inexpensively.
Oh, he was awesome, awesome individual. We were going to miss him immensely. And unlike a lot of the people who are getting jobs in the state, he wasn't the Bachelor of Arts or a master's degree. He was a man who understood the land and the people, and he worked to preserve the good things that he saw in this area. I gave him keys to town lands. I went out and checked duck boxes with him, and like I said, I don't think there's anybody who enjoys the outdoors that didn't know Dick Turner. He was an awesome individual.
I think the people were much more aware back in the olden days because they were farmers, and they knew a lot about the land and the soil and where they were abutted marshes and wetlands. They knew how to handle them. They were taught by elders, you know, and I think that's almost all lost nowadays. There's so little agriculture goes on. There's very, very few families that are making their living or supplementing their living by agricultural practices. The Nemasket River, of course, is so important because of the alewife herring population that goes up through here, because that is, you know, one of the largest in the state, I believe, at any rate. And so without this river being in navigable conditions for them, and it's a challenge, you know.
One thing really important with this whole conservation of diatomaceous fish and river herring in Massachusetts is the whole concept of a herring warden. And I think the towns that have a strong herring warden network really have great management and stewardship of their herring run. Middleborough, Lakeborough, they have that nailed with the Herring Commission. A lot of other towns have that. They also have the Department of Natural Resources that have this network too, but many towns don't have that. And one thing I'm really worried about is losing that culture, losing that stewardship. Down in Cape Cod, we lost Dana Conduit this past year. He was a herring warden with the town of Brewster for many, many years, and he was just fantastic. We've got Dick Turner, longtime employee with the Fish and Wildlife Service, Division of Fish and Wildlife Service in Massachusetts. Dick had a great interest in river herring as well. Tremendous stewardship, not just for river herring, but for so much else. That type of employee, that type of volunteer is so vital. And you know, we're not seeing the young folks get as involved as we used to. And so it's really important to try to have, find ways to get young people involved and try to build the next Dick Turners and Dana Conduits. Really vital. So I can't say enough about those guys. They basically devoted their lives to help out these types of natural resources.
You know, the young don't come back to, the young alewives do not come back to this system until they're 2 or 3 years old. And so, you know, when you've had a year when you didn't think many of them got out of the pond, you're kind of concerned what's going to happen 2 or 3 years from now, whether it's going to plummet, you know. They seem to have, the alewives and river heron have seemed to succeed with a lot of adverse conditions. And I have an idea that as long as there's water flowing, they're going to do it. I just hope that it continues forever.
Dick Turner, who lived in Lakeville for most, if not his entire life, was a phenomenal environmentalist for the area. His passing is a great loss for anyone that's been involved in the environment for the entire area, not just Middleborough and Lakeville. I like to joke that Dick has forgotten more about environmental actions than I've ever actually learned in my life.
Dick Turner seemed like a wealth of knowledge. I unfortunately didn't get as much time with him as others, But from the time I did, I just he's one of those people that you just want to sit and listen to his stories, you know, because you know he has amazing stories to tell. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't get too much time with him, but Tom spoke so highly of him, and Tom seemed like he really got a lot of his knowledge from him, so it was pretty cool.
Dick Turner was a great person, a great naturalist. He will be missed. The amount of knowledge and love for nature was unbelievable. And it's, you know, I always enjoyed talking to him and being around the river with him.
Dick was very interested in the Middleborough herring run, the Middleborough and Lakeville herring run and spawning grounds, and some of his knowledge and expertise has been instrumental in forming the thinking of the current Herring Commission, as well as wardens and general herring protectors around the area for years upon years.
One day, I asked my mom, I said, "Hey Ma, it's a nice day today. Would you like to take a paddle on the Nemasket River?" And she said, "Well, Dick, I lived in this town for 30-odd years now. I think it's about time I went down that river." So my dad and I set an easy chair in the center of the canoe, and she had an umbrella she could hold over her head if it was too sunny, and we starts down the river, and all of a sudden another canoe comes into sight, and it was Kevin St. George and his wife from across Assawampset Pond. So we chatted along the way, and of course they were wanting to move a lot faster than we, so we didn't stay together very long. But they had probably left the vehicle down at Wareham Street, and we were not going that far. We were going to turn around and paddle back up against the current, you know. But that was a memorable occasion.